Thank you for joining us for our face-to-face 2027 RFP or Request for Proposals information session. We're so excited to dive into what I believe is our 34th annual conference, which is pretty wild. And so our hope is to impart just information that helps you submit a stellar proposal in advance of our upcoming conference. So let's dive in. Welcome, everybody. My name is Kimberly Olson. I use she, her pronouns. I'm proud to be the executive director of the New York City Arts and Education Roundtable. I'm going to offer a self-description as well for anybody that's not able to access this presentation visually, and we'll do our best to describe what's also on the slides in text and pictures as well. So for my self-description, I'm a pale-skinned white woman. I'm wearing currently brown framed glasses. My brown hair is worn straight to my shoulders with a little curl at the end. I have a black tank top dress on, and I'm sitting against a background of a fabulous piece of student artwork celebrating the vibrancy and diversity of arts in New York City, featuring a very prominent Lady Liberty with an art palette. And Kinsey, I'll toss it over to you.
Thanks, Kim. Hi, everybody. My name is Kinsey Keck. I use she, her pronouns. I am the programs director here at the Roundtable and also serve kind of as the main point of contact for most things related to face-to-face. I am a white woman with brown hair. It's parted down the middle and pulled back in a clip today. I'm also wearing some large, round, wire-framed glasses and a very comfy, dusty rose-colored mesh t-shirt. And I'm in front of a blurred background. And on the screen, we have images of ourselves as well.
Nice. So a bit about the Roundtable. Our mission here at the Roundtable is to improve, advance, and advocate for arts education. We're a community of organizations and practitioners committed to sharing information, providing professional development, and communicating with the public to promote our work in schools and beyond. Let's go to that next slide. Here are some of our values, which center on continual learning and improvement through the exchange of ideas, skills, and knowledge, the mutual support and shared aspirations of our diverse community, and also the power of the arts to activate learning and change lives. Let's go to our next slide. So here is how we plan to spend our time together today. We'll speak a little bit about the conference itself, give you an overview of the RFP timeline, and that process. We'll then walk through the application. We'll talk about the scoring rubric. We'll have some time for Q&A as well before we close out our virtual session. This will be recorded as it's something that we're going to offer as a resource to folks that are not only in this space, but registered and those that might want to access it afterwards. And that recording will be shared with folks within the coming week or so following the session. As always, with all Roundtable events, we encourage you to take care of yourself. You're welcome if you're in this space to be on camera, off camera. That is totally up to you. You see we have time for Q&A at the bottom of our agenda. However, you're welcome to put questions in the chat as we go along. We'll do our best to address things in the moment. Otherwise, we'll save those for the end where we have time for not only to address those chat questions, but also anything that folks want to raise verbally in the space. So with that, Kinsey, tossing to you.
Thanks, Kim. So first, let's just chat a little bit about face-to-face itself. As Kim mentioned, Face-to-Face 2027 will be number 34. And this will convene arts education practitioners for moments of learning, growth, and connection. At the conference, presenters share best practices. They discuss local, state, national, and international policies, address enduring issues, including quality assessment, sustainability, professional development, equity and inclusion, art and social justice, just to name a few. In terms of our audience, it really is diverse, as diverse as the field itself. So we welcome arts administrators and teaching artists, folks also who do both of those things, because many people in our field do wear many hats. We have school personnel, students, funders, consultants, and representatives of community-based organizations join. For a little context, in 2026, we had 585 total registrants for the conference. That was for virtual and in person. And we had a total of 466 unique individuals join us in person for those 2 days then. Just checking my notes as I go along, so bear with me. Let's see, I shared a little bit about our audience. Great. Then let's talk about 2027. So as I mentioned, we do virtual and in-person programs for the conference. So we'll be starting in 2027 with our online conference dates. This is going to be a little bit different from what we've done in the past, but we have selected Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern on Zoom leading up to the conference to hold our virtual sessions. So those will be March 30th, April 6th, April 13th, and April 20th in 2027. Also new this year with that new cadence, our virtual sessions are going to be 60 minutes. We're finding folks get a little fatigued with Zoom, so 90 minutes is proving difficult to have everyone for that full hour and a half. So we're transitioning to a 60-minute virtual sessions. And then our in-person conference will take place on April 28th and 29th, 2027. That will be again at Shepard Hall, in Shepard Hall at the City College of New York in Harlem. And those are 2 full days, and those sessions will remain 90 minutes. Other key dates. So this is sort of our proposal process timeline. Our request for proposals is now open. It opened on July 8th. You are at the information session right now, July 22nd, or maybe watching it back. The application deadline, we request that proposals be submitted by Tuesday, September 22nd, 2026 at 7 p.m. Eastern. And just given a number of other competing timelines and deadlines, we will not be extending that deadline. So if please do put whatever notifications you need for yourself in your calendar, and make sure that you give yourself ample time to submit, because again, that will not be extended. Then we will go through our review process, which we'll talk more about, and applicants will be notified by Monday, December 7th, 2026. They will have then a little bit of time to submit their acceptance to do their session. And then after the new year, we will have orientations, mandatory orientations for accepted presenters. Those will take place on Wednesday, January 6th from 4 to 6, and Friday, January 8th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Presenters need only send one representative of their session, and they only need to attend one of those, but we do require that orientation be attended for presenting sessions. I think this is you, Kim.
Yeah, I think just to underscore, it is a competitive RFP process. I believe last year we ended up accepting about 27 out of 81 proposals received, which was about 33%. So that's just also something to keep in mind as well. If at first you don't succeed, please consider resubmitting. And now we're going to talk about why an RFP. What are we looking for? The Roundtable remains committed to making sure and feels it's important to offer an RFP process as part of this. Not only does it afford the conference and our broader field with a greater variety of presenters, topics, but it gives an open invitation to folks not only in our community, but those beyond it, that are known to us at the Roundtable and in New York. We've had folks from not only across the city, but the state, the country, and quite frankly, the world present, with folks as far as New Zealand joining us as presenters in the past. And so we love to have this invitation open for folks to submit and help continue to support the broader field through professional developments such as this. So what are we looking for? Keep in mind really the breadth of folks that Kinsey mentioned earlier who are going to be attending the conference. We love sessions that go beyond sort of a surface level 101, as we do have a lot of folks with great experience in the field attending. We're also looking for sessions that range across art forms or are also in adjacent fields as well, things that might be of interest to individuals working at that intersection of arts, education, social justice, community engagement, and more. As I mentioned, organizations or presenters can be New York City based, but folks from everywhere are welcome to submit an RFP and present. I already mentioned our audience to keep in mind as you are crafting what that session is. And I do want to uplift something new for us this year. It's really important at the Roundtable that as a service organization, our work is very much driven by and response to the needs of the field. And so us having many different community town halls, gatherings, surveys, we wanted to uplift some of the frequently requested topics that have come up over the past past year or two, I would say. This doesn't mean that these are the only topics we are looking for or the only ones that we're going to be wanting to have at the conference. But as you're thinking about what session to potentially propose, here's some ideas to get you started. So reading these aloud, it's PD for arts administrator, beyond that 101. We're talking marketing, sustainable partnerships, budgeting and finance, board governance and activation, giving and receiving feedback, managing other folks, managing other members of your team, strategic planning, leadership training, nonprofit governance, evaluation, and I'm sure so much more. Teaching artist sustainability is one that comes up quite a bit as well. Financial literacy, the business of being a teaching artist, grant writing skills and resources geared at individuals, contract negotiation, and rate setting. Other topics include responsible use of AI, arts and activism or social justice intersections with arts education, classroom management skills, community engagement, early childhood education, and then access and inclusion best practices, including but certainly not limited to working with multilingual learners, working with students with disabilities, supporting the LGBTQIA+ students and community members, and more. Again, important, not limited to just these topics, but just ones that have come up frequently as requested by community members. A quick note too, just on representation, if you're proposing a session that is speaking about working with a specific population, we encourage you to consider how are those voices represented in the session to make sure there's not any sort of othering in language or in practice that might take place during the workshop or panel. Let's keep going.
Thanks, Kim. So we're going to go through some frequently asked questions and share the answers to those for you all. But I also see there's one question in the chat asking if we could expand a little bit on what we mean by accepted presenter orientations. So if you go through the proposal review process and you are your proposal is accepted, in January, we ask for a representative of your session to attend this 2-hour orientation where we go over all of the details and what to expect in terms of logistics, communications, and things like that leading up to the conference. We also talk about what we're going to need from you. Before that happens, we ask you to confirm your session information. We ask you about room setup and materials and things like that. So we go over sort of all of that logistical information together. And then we also create an opportunity for accepted presenters to spend some time with one another and talk about their proposals and sort of refresh on them. Because by the time you present this, it will have been close to a year for some people since they actually proposed it. So we give folks a chance to kind of revisit the materials that they submitted in the months prior and connect with other presenters who will be at the conference as well. So, okay, great. That was helpful. Glad to hear. Okay, our first frequently asked question is who is eligible to submit? The answer is everyone. You can submit a proposal as an individual presenter. You can submit as a group of individuals. You can submit as a representative or a group of representatives from an organization or a company or a school. It's really runs the gamut. There's no one who isn't eligible, but we will talk about some other things about number of people and things like that as we move forward.
I can take it from there then. Can I submit more than one proposal? So the submittable platform, which I've put a link to in the chat, is limited to submitting one proposal per submittable account. So with that being said, so Kinsey and I work for the same company. If I submit a proposal, that is my one limit. Say we wanted to have another proposal that's submitted on our company's behalf, Kinsey would have to be the one to submit that. However, while an organization is able to submit multiple proposals, the conference policy dictates that individuals and organizations can only present in one session at face-to-face. So if we both proposed, only one of those sessions could be accepted. This policy exists because we have a finite number of sessions that we're able to offer. And so we want to be able to increase the range and diversity of conference presenters that are part of the event and to provide more equitable opportunities to applicants across the field. So with that in mind, be sure to talk to your colleagues. See if there are other folks that are applying. Um, I know a question that also comes up sort of as a sub-question to this. What happens if I'm a teaching artist at multiple organizations? If you're applying as an individual teaching artist and one of those organizations submits a proposal and both get accepted, you can both present because if you're choosing to submit as an individual or if you're choosing to submit on behalf of another organization, that is totally fine. We know that folks in our field wear many hats and can work at multiple organizations. I'm happy to I know there's oftentimes questions about this, so we can answer some questions in the chat or save more one-on-one wonders for the very end or to follow up with via email.
Yeah, that's great. The next question is, can I present a workshop I've presented before at face-to-face? And while you are welcome to submit any session proposal that you would like, we do want to note that the conference committee and the review panel strongly prefers not to repeat sessions that have previously been featured at a face-to-face conference, whether it's virtual or in person and you're wanting to switch it up. We just highly encourage former presenters to submit a new proposal rather than one that they've already presented at face-to-face. And that's just similar to what Kim was sharing. We want to make sure that we are increasing the diversity and difference of offerings year to year as well. So we prefer not to double dip, as they say.
I'll go to a quick question in the chat before going to the next one on the FAQ list. There's a question about what about individuals submitting more than one proposal, knowing that only one will be selected, if any? That's exactly it. So while individuals are welcome to submit more than one proposal, know that it will just be at most one that is accepted. We can sort of connect offline about what that looks like logistically. Sometimes folks have used different email addresses to be able to facilitate that. If that is something that you're considering, though, and not quite sure how to handle it, I would say please email Kinsey directly. She can put her email in the chat to help sort of facilitate what that looks like. But again, keep in mind, at most one proposal will be accepted. So next up, we have, do I need to have all the details and information about the other presenters? And the answer here is ideally yes. While you can submit a proposal without knowing all of the presenter information, it can affect your chance of being accepted. For example, if I wanted to propose a panel discussion and I list no information about the panelists, that likely will negatively impact my application. So as we'll see in the rubric, which we'll go through in just a moment, this information is utilized to determine what the scores are for the proposals. If you don't have specifics, though, we know sometimes there are many different reasons why that could happen. Share absolutely everything you can about who these co-presenters might be that you plan to invite. A strong application, though, will have all this information completed and included.
And one thing I want to add to that is also if you are proposing a session that has additional presenters, please make sure that they know that they are being proposed as your co-presenter. We did have someone, I think this last year, who received an email from me letting them know that they were accepted and they had no idea they were on a proposal. And they also may have, if they had submitted their own proposal and didn't know, then that could have affected one or the other being submitted. So make sure that you're communicating with the other people before you submit their information as a presenter. Before we do the next question, there's another question in the chat from Sharon. If you present a workshop, are you allowed to connect to your participants afterwards? For instance, if you present information and they seek your advice or services afterwards outside of face-to-face. So we we collect information from registrants like through the registration form. That is not information that we share with the presenters. However, you as a presenter are very welcome during your session, whether it's virtual or in person, to have like a mailing list or share your contact information. So folks could sign up if they want to hear from you, and you'd be very welcome to contact them afterward. Or you can leave your contact information, and they can be the one to do the outreach. We'll also request from you before we send out the sort of resource wrap up after the conference. We will collect all resources and links and information from presenters that they would like to share too, which could also include links to joining a mailing list. So there are ways to do that, yes, but we won't be providing a list of contacts from registrants for the conference.
I think just to add to that too, Kinsey, sometimes folks might, if they're in person, bring a sheet where if participants are wanting to share name and contact information to stay in touch afterwards, folks also might opt to do that. That's not something we have capacity to manage on our end, but definitely something that comes up.
And then one more chat question. Are co-presenters the same as panelists in this context? Yes. So we have both workshops and panels. So we do sort of use presenter as a blanket term for anyone who might be facilitating something or speaking during a session. Okay, let's see. How are selections made? Is that right?
That's it.
How are selections made? Okay. So we do a panel review process for all proposals that are received, which we will again go over the rubric that they use to score applications in a little bit. But we convene a panel of about 8 to 12 arts education practitioners. They represent multiple different careers, organizations, disciplines, tenures in the field of arts education, and they are randomly assigned two-person per application to review and score each application. They use a rubric, which we will look at, but then there's also, larger conversation. We try to make sure that we have a balanced group of sessions that represent a diverse set of artistic disciplines and intended audiences and topics as well, to try to make sure that there is something for everyone at the conference. So that's part of the conversation too. The conference committee is also really intentional in identifying gaps in topics or art forms based on the sort of pool of proposals that we've received and current goings on in the field and conversations in the field. So we do engage in additional session curation as needed. So sometimes there are curated sessions at the conference. And just for reference, last year we received 81 proposals total via the RFP, and we accepted 27. So that's about a third. I think that's exactly a third.
Mhm.
Yeah.
A question came up in the chat, which I'll just upload verbally as well. Is there a number or a limit of the number of presenters per workshop? And the answer is yes. That does vary based on whether it's a workshop, which is defined as a session with no more than 2 facilitators in which participants are exploring techniques, strategies, approaches. So think a more hands-on experience and approach, whereas a panel is a session consisting of a moderator and no more than 3 panelists. So that would be 4 individuals total who are giving brief presentations or engaging in a conversation with one another on a topic for multiple viewpoints. If you have a question about which type would my session fall into, again, the lovely Kinsey Keck is your person. I know she would be happy to help support in looking at what makes the most sense for your proposal. And I think last but not least on this page, before we talk through the application, will accepted presenters be paid? And the answer is yes. Each presenter, so each individual that is presenting in a session will receive a $100 honorarium in addition to free admission to the full conference. That free admission to the conference is non-transferable and is just for the folks that are presenting. We are not able to offer travel and accommodation, though, at this time. Let's go to the next slide.
Right. If questions are still coming up, feel free to put them in the chat, but we are going to take a break from these slides and just walk through the application, which I do already have open here. So as we mentioned, our application is administered in this platform called Submittable. So when you go to apply, this is the page you will be brought to. It does have kind of a rundown of all the quick information and timeline here for you. You'll also see a link here, which maybe you can put this in the chat. We've also created a separate Google Doc with all of the application questions in it. While in Submittable, you do have the capability to save a draft of your application. Some folks prefer the safety of preparing their answers in a separate document, just in case something goes wrong while they are typing away on this platform. So that Google Doc, which is now in the chat, is a document that you can go to File and make a copy. You can create your own document where you can prepare your questions, and then you can copy and paste into this platform if you prefer. If not, you can save a draft. And I do believe that Submittable actually auto saves every minute or so. But here we are. So part one is the proposer information. So first we ask for the name of the proposer who is completing this, first and last, and their contact information. This is the person who will receive the notification in December. We send it to the person who has sent in the proposal. So make sure that that is an email address that you know is the one you want to receive the determination letter. Then we have our session title here, which will appear on all conference materials. Now you will have a chance, of course, to revisit this if your session is accepted, but please do be sure that your title is succinct and clearly communicates the topic and content of your session. We want folks to be able to really have a strong understanding of what they're walking into based on just the title and the brief description of your session as they're perusing conference materials. We have the session format, which Kim just touched on. So we have panel, which is a discussion format with a moderator and up to 3 panelists. Then we also have a workshop. So we have a max of 2 facilitators per workshop, but this is more hands-on type session. And you kind of have those descriptions there. So we'll have you select that. You can indicate whether you would prefer to present virtually, in person, or either. Again, just flagging this year, it's a little bit different in that virtual sessions are 60 minutes and in-person sessions are 90 minutes. If you are open to doing either, you just acknowledge that you understand you may have to make adjustments to the session timing based on the format that is eventually confirmed if your session is accepted. And I'm just going to click that button because there's something in the application later that will pop out since we selected that. Before we get down there, we ask that you select the attendee intended experience level. And there is a little bit of guidance on all of these at the bottom. So we ask that you be specific in selecting the intended audience. It's possible that this information may be used in some sort of labeling system in our printed program. You'll also have a chance to review this later, but it's just helpful for us, for attendees, as they look through materials. We ask about the intended audience. Again, some guidance down there. The art forms that are addressed in the session, if any. The age range addressed, if any. So all of these have options of general or no specific age range or art form addressed. And again, you have a little bit of notes there if things are confusing. We ask that you select the option that best describes the primary focus area of your session. This is really helpful for us in just like quick reviewing during the panels process. And you do have the option of selecting and specifying something else if you would like. Then we move, let me pause. Make sure that I haven't skipped anything.
And Kinsey, while you do that, I will uplift Sharon's question from the chat. When you do workshops online, will someone from Face-to-Face act as a moderator, let people in the room, or will the presenter have to do this or have somebody else monitoring? If somebody else is there, will they be considered a co-presenter? That's a great question. So you will have at least 1 or 2 members of the roundtable team in the Zoom room with you. I love to refer to them as the sort of the Zoom captains, so that they're taking care of all of the permissions, the letting people in, that's also something that as we're gathering materials from you in advance, that's something we can screen share, have materials ready, have breakout rooms ready, so that you as the presenter are able to focus on the actual session content itself. Whereas Kinsey and our programs associate will be able to help, and potentially conference coordinator can help behind the scenes with all of that. These folks are not considered co-presenters. They're members of the roundtable team in the same way that we will have on-site in-person support as well for the conference itself at City College. An age range addressed is for the participants or the age your workshop content is about. So it will be the latter. So it's safe to say that you'll have mostly adults at face-to-face. Occasionally we have some folks in higher education, but it will be adults is the primary audience for this conference. So more so the age range is about the actual workshop content. So if I am presenting about creative aging, that audience that I might select is then seniors. Great. So let's dive in a little further. And now we really get into some of the meat of this application, starting off with focus question. So this is your chance to share just what the critical challenge or issue that participants are going to investigate in your session in a question format. We encourage you to keep it brief, concise, but also realistic to the amount of time. We're talking 60 minutes virtual case, 90 minutes in person. So have that in mind as you're crafting what the focus will be. Outline. So this is where you articulate really what's going to happen in the session, and is really one of the main sections or a major section that our review panelists are going to be looking at to understand how the session's going to unfold. Note there is a 500-word limit, and it's something where lesson plan format, bullet points are definitely accepted. This is intended to be a scaffolded breakdown of the different scheduled events or activities that are going to happen in your session. We ask that you try to include times for each activity. So for example, say I have a circle clap warm up that I'm going to have. I might want to say that's going to be 5 minutes at the top, just so we can get a sense of, okay, does it feel realistic, the number of activities or events proposed for your session? I know folks in this space know this as well. Try not to jam pack and plan for the full, say, 90 minutes when you're in person. Instead, we encourage you to plan for 80 minutes, just to take into account if a conversation gets really juicy and folks want to continue to dig in, or maybe reflection or sharing goes a little bit longer than you anticipated. For a virtual session, we encourage 50 to 55 minutes planning for. There will be a brief roundtable welcome at the top just to orient folks to the Zoom room space in those cases. In the case of your outline, we're also looking to see, are there reflection strategies or reflection time built in? And also please be sure to identify any terms that might not be self-evident, especially any acronyms. We have folks representing a wide span of the arts education sector reviewing these, but even still, you want to make sure that folks that are reviewing it, even if they might be outside your art form, are able to understand what it is that you're referring to. Yeah, really, this is intended to be a clear picture of what's going to be taking place in the session, and one of the most important aspects of the application. Just a tip to keep in mind, we find that sometimes one of the downfalls we see in applications is that folks tend to oversimplify. They might just put warm up, main activity, conclusion, and that doesn't really give us a lot of information about what's actually going to take place. So we're going to keep on scrolling. This next section is what Kinsey alluded to earlier. So if you decide, well, I could present this in person or I could present this virtually. Here is where in the application you're able to indicate how you plan to pivot if need be, for either condensing the activities or adding to it. So you will have a bit of space to be able to articulate that separate from just your general outline. Outcomes. So this is really, we're looking to understand what are folks going to gain, learn, or be able to do after attending this session. Clear and concise is the name of the game. This is 100 words maximum, this section. Um, if you want to think of it in terms of a sentence starter, participants will be able to dot, dot, dot. Um, Something that we know the face-to-face audience loves more than anything is tangible turnkey takeaways. How can I take what you have taught me and turnkey it in my practice? That's the number one thing that the feedback that we get is that folks love to be able to apply that learning. So we encourage you to think in that, have that in mind as you're thinking about the overarching part of your session and your outcomes. And last for this part, program summary. So this is 75 words maximum, and this is really the session summary that will then be used for publication in the conference website and program. Bear in mind, you will be able to adjust as needed, that this isn't your sort of end all be all in terms of what you submit. But this is intended to give conference attendees and then also reviewers in a sense as well, a clear picture of what to expect in your session, including whether or not they should be ready to be up on their feet. And it's also keep in mind how folks are going to ultimately decide what a session that they're attending. So a great sort of marketing tool as well for you to help have folks come and participate. Feedback that we've gotten in recent years, be sure to do a pass. Make sure, does that description really align with what folks are going to experience during the session? As I mentioned, this will be editable post-acceptance along with the title. And I recommend just thinking about this description in relationship to the title itself. It should add to the description and work in tandem with, or add to the title and work in tandem. It shouldn't be a just like verbatim repeating of what the title is. And then in terms of, let's see. Just for reference, here is a copy of the face-to-face program from last year, just to get a sense of what folks from last year ended up submitting for their final session descriptions and titles. Let's see, Kinsey, I think we got a question in the chat. What is that one?
Yeah, so before we move on to the next section, Kelsey asked, should the panels have activities for the participants or just the workshops? I think that's a really interesting question. I believe this is in reference to the outline section we were talking about where you were mentioning activities. And I think that panels are welcome to have activities. In fact, we really love when you engage the audience even for something more like a sit-down discussion in some sort of some activity or something. They're not required though, but we would still like to see in the outline, if you're proposing a panel, we want to see sort of the breakdown of how much time you intend to spend on what questions and what are the questions and pieces that you want to discuss during the panel. Or if there is time for presentation and then discussion, what is the presentation? What is the content? How much time are you spending on it when you're thinking about your outline? Kim, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think you're spot on. I think even if it's not something where you have the exact questions written out yet, understanding the topics that are going to be addressed, there's different, of course, ways to approach a panel, but if it's something where individual folks are each presenting, having a sense of each of the panelists will present for 10 minutes before engaging in some type of 30-minute roundtable discussion led by the moderator, followed by some Q&A. That's sort of what we're looking for as opposed to discussion, something that gives us a little bit more understanding of what to expect for the conversation overall, but definitely not a requirement for there to be some type of activation.
Great.
Great.
Just a couple more questions before we keep going.
Mhm.
What's an average attendance number in this case to plan activities with? Which is a great question, and it does vary. Um, for virtual sessions, we usually have something around like 30 to 80. I know that's a big range. But I think we're usually more in that middle, like 40-ish, 45-ish. But you can expect anywhere like that. And for both virtual and in-person sessions as we get closer to the conference and I have an idea of how many people have registered, I'll be sending a little bit more precise estimates of how many folks to expect. But then in person for those sessions, I mean, it does vary. It does really vary as well. I think that you can expect anywhere from 20-ish attendees in your space up to if it's a very popular session, we've had 80 people fit in for a panel, or I think we had like 90 last year at one panel. But the average, I would say, is in the like 25 to 35 range, probably. Does that sound right to you, Kim?
I think so. We tend not to limit the number of folks in a virtual session. Of course, our Zoom room is capped at 500. We have
Yeah.
not hit that since the pandemic era. But I think safe to say that's Kinsey's estimates are spot on. For the in-person sessions, of course, there is a limit in terms of just how many bodies can fit in a space. And that's why we try to gather information from attendees beforehand so that we're able to sort of place sessions based on a number of factors, including how many folks are expressing interest, if there's going to be movement in a session, if there are specific technical requirements or accessibility requirements that one room might fit a session over another, or materials to keep in mind. But again, Kinsey and her team does a fabulous job in sort of communicating that information to folks in advance. And that's also why we have sort of a presenter orientation too, so that you can understand what that flow of information looks like, so that you are best set up to then show up on the day of the conference and do your thing.
Yes, indeed. Okay, so the next section of our application is presenter information. I just scrolled back up because depending if you select panel or workshop, you'll see a different part of the form here. So I selected panel here, but it's basically requesting the same information. It's just the number of times it requests it here. So we ask first the panel lead presenter or moderator name. We want their first and last name, their title, organization or affiliation, their email address, a phone number, and then we also ask for their bio and resume or CV. I know this is a lot of information, which is why we have that frequently asked question about, do I have to have all of this for all of my presenters? And we do really prefer to have access to all this information. Not only does the bio and name and affiliation eventually go into the program, but we need resumes or CVs from all presenters for our CTLE credit process. So we do offer folks who are certified teachers the opportunity to get CTLE credit if they attend face-to-face. And for our documentation purposes, we are required to collect resumes of presenters. So it's really important that we receive those, but it's also tied to one of the questions in the rubric around relevant experience. So this is important and it does contribute to the scoring. So then we ask for the same information for the additional panelists. There's space for up to 3. So as much information, as much of this as you can gather is great. If you selected workshop, you'll see the same questions, but just for the 2 presenters, the lead presenter and the additional presenter, if there is one. Okay. And then we have some quick session agreements that we ask folks to agree to before submitting their application. So you check the box and it signifies that you agree. So we ask that presenters notify the roundtable staff immediately if they're not able to present their session on the day or time that is assigned. So if your session is accepted, you will receive that determination email with an assignment of date and time. So if that doesn't work for you for some reason, we just ask that you immediately let us know so that we can make our best efforts to accommodate. You also agree that one representative from your session will attend one of the mandatory virtual presenter orientations on those dates that we discussed. Your session's lead facilitator, so who is going to be receiving that determination information and most communications from us, agrees to inform co-presenters of all expectations and deadlines, materials communicated to them by us. You agree to respond in a timely fashion to our correspondence regarding technical needs so that we can best support your session at the conference, whether in person or virtual. And we ask that you share any special requests as soon as possible. You agree you'll meet with your co-presenters in advance to provide overall guidance on the organization content, expectations, etc., as they're communicated to you. And just you also agree that you will not bring items like paints or glitter or similar materials that may stain or damage the floor or furniture into the venue during your session. And that is the end of the application. So as you can see here at the bottom left, you can save a draft. It saved itself automatically 6 minutes ago. But again, you also have that other document if you prefer. And when everything is ready to go, you'll click submit. I think I saw the chat.
Yeah, so we got a question in the chat. Should we submit our career resume, artist CV, or teacher CV? To which I respond, it's up to you. Whatever you feel is most relevant to the session that you're proposing.
Mhm.
I think this leads us then into our rubric, and then we'll go into our final Q&A.
Yes, and I think that that was a great time to ask that question. So we do have the rubric linked here, and I can drop that in the chat in a moment. But basically, these are the 6 criteria points that each application is, pardon me, scored on. So there's the clarity and strength of focus question. And if you do look at the rubric more in depth, you'll see each point value and the assessment that reviewers will be using to determine the point value. So there's clarity and strength of focus question, clarity and depth of the session outline. So that outline piece that we spent a lot of time talking about has its own piece there. The clarity and strength of the intended outcomes or takeaways. So what folks will be receiving from your session and taking with them. Then there is related to the CV question, the demonstrated evidence of experience. We want to see that the people who are presenting on this material have experience in that topic area or in that field. So that speaks to the resume. Which one do I want to do? It should be whichever one you feel most closely aligns with and shows your expertise in the topic area that you're proposing. Then there's the overall proposal quality and relevance. The relevance piece is really like, is this appropriate for this conference specifically and kind of what's going on in the field right now? And then we have an overall priority for acceptance. And I think that Kim dropped that in the chat, perhaps. Thank you. That's wonderful. And this is also, so you have access to the rubric. It's on the RFP website as well, but you can always reach out to us. And that does bring us to questions. I know that we've answered a lot on the go, but if anyone has any lingering questions, please put them in the chat, or you're welcome to come off of mute as well if you would like.
Kinsey and I are both educators, teaching artists. We'll give our some of our wait time just to make sure that folks have a chance.
Thank you so much for the presentation. I know this is roughly about RFPs and things like that, but do you have a ballpark estimate of what the registration will be just for attending?
I say that again, the registration fee for
For
attending?
just attending, yeah, attending the conference.
Oh,
Yeah.
I believe it's going to be similar to previous years. I can put that link in the chat for you
Great.
to have a sense. We have different tiers based
Oh,
on
okay.
sort of if folks are members of the roundtable, if they're outside the roundtable, or if they are students. So give me a moment to find that.
I
That's
believe,
great.
I could be misspeaking, but I believe that our early bird registration rate for roundtable members is 160. The
Oh,
roundtable member cost is 180. And then the non-member is maybe 220, but I could be wrong.
You're right on the
Am I?
money.
Okay. And then students, I believe, is 60. We do also, once we launch the actual conference registration website and everything, we always have available a subsidy request form as well. So if the conference registration fee is a barrier to attending, you can complete that and request a subsidy.
great. Thank you so much.
We also do group discounts then as well
Yeah.
for folks for schools or organizations or just groups of folks that want to get a discount of over a certain number of people. Registration for the actual conference, I believe, will launch probably end of January, beginning of February.
Yeah. One question in the chat. The one limit workshop panel selection per presenter is for both virtual and in person, right? Yes, I think if I'm reading this correctly, that would be correct. So regardless, if you're proposing virtual and or in-person sessions, you can only present one time. Cool.
Thanks. I think Kinsey and I will stay on if there's any sort of lingering questions at the end that folks want to ask that might be more tailored to you. But just to, if you can put up our final slide, Kinsey, just with a final recap. Um,
Mhm.
So, some final things to keep in mind. The RFP, here it comes. The application deadline is Tuesday, September 22nd at 7 o'clock Eastern Time. That will not be extended. And we are not able to make accommodations if you miss it. That's why we try to give, that is now 2 months exactly from today. So please be sure to get that in on time. Applicants will be notified no later than Monday, December 7th of this year if their proposal has been accepted. Presenter orientation, again, which is to be attended just by one person, and either of these will be held virtually. It will be either, you can attend one of these either on Wednesday, January 6th from 4 to 6 o'clock Eastern Time, or Friday, January 8th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Then the dates of the conference itself will have a series of face-to-face at 4 on Tuesdays, starting March 30th, going through April 20th. That will be once a week, with the in-person conference culminating at City College on April 28th and 29th. I think that should be it. We'll stay on, as I had mentioned. Thank you all for folks that were able to join us. In the Zoom room live. We'll have a recording of this shared out. And of course, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out. Kinsey had her email address up and it's also been put in the chat. But we'll hang out for the next few minutes in case anybody has any further questions. Thanks, everybody.